Okay, our next presenter is John Rottenstein, or JR as we call him at Atlassian, and he leads our internal systems team at Atlassian. Now, his team provides IT services to the business side of Atlassian, such as HR, finance, sales, and marketing. And their systems support our famous business model of selling software online without having any salespeople involved. Now, you may know John from such blog posts as How to Get a Job at Atlassian, How Atlassian Counts Customers, and How Atlassian Encourages Our Software Renewals. John also created the core values video that you'll find on our website. And those core values will feature heavily now as John tells us all about information management at Atlassian. Thank you, John.
On the 11th of July 2007, almost 4 years ago, I was sitting in the offices of Atlassian in Sydney listening to a presentation about Confluence. I had just joined the company 2 months prior and I was agog at what our corporate wiki could do. All our information was online, accessible and open to all staff. Better yet, we were all using beautiful Macintosh computers, using software not made by Microsoft, and we spent our lives using modern web technology. This particular presentation was being given by Stuart Mader, an expert on wiki adoption and author of the Wiki Patterns website. I was taking in his words of wisdom about adopting a corporate wiki, and I was drinking the Kool-Aid. Yes, I thought, surely everyone will see the wisdom of our ways and they'll definitely adopt a wiki for their corporate intranet. I was on an information high. Then along came a question from some of the audience that I will never forget. Someone from a large bank stuck up their hand and spoke 8 words that are etched on my memory forever. How do we use Confluence for document management? Document management? My world stopped. My thoughts stopped. My soaring expectations took a nosedive. How could this person be talking about old-fashioned document management when we were showing him the new way of managing information? It would be like discussing the intricacies of a Beethoven symphony and then having someone come up and ask what type of staples we use to keep the music together. Alas, that's the world we live in. The haves and the have-nots. Those with vision and those who live in the dark ages. Those who use the web and those who use SharePoint. Which leads us to the topic... Which leads us to the topic of today's presentation, living in a Microsoft free world, in which I'll be discussing how we use information management at Atlassian. Here's an overview of how we'll spend the next 40 minutes together. I'll start by looking at the importance of information management and why it is significant for Atlassian. Then I'll deep dive into how we use Confluence at Atlassian for information management. This will be a bit of a show and tell, where I get to show you some of the inner workings of our company. Also, many people consider Atlassian to be a different type of company, and we often get questions about how our business model operates. So I'll conclude by throwing off the covers and revealing the systems that support our unique business model. Now, none of the methods and systems that I'll discuss will require any form of Microsoft technology. I should explain that at Atlassian, all of our servers run on Linux. All of our development takes place in Java. Hardly anyone has Microsoft Office, and almost everybody has a Mac. However, I don't mind whether you use Microsoft technology. That's your decision. However, I am passionate about how information is managed in a business. My goal here today is to show you information management Atlassian style, so that you can walk out of here with your notebooks filled with great ideas about how to manage information in your business. So let's begin by talking about information management. Now, information management goals cannot be met by software alone. Software is just one component in managing information. More important, I think, is the work culture that encourages workers to share information, where they're willing to put information out there for others to consume rather than hoarding it in their private stores. That aspect is so important that rather than referring to information management, I like to think of it as information culture that includes the people as well as the systems. Information management at Atlassian is successful due to our information culture, and I'll reveal that culture to you today with examples of our internal systems and cultural memes. In fact, the term information culture was coined back in the 1990s, before the web as we know it. This is a diagram from a study in Finland that looked at the relationship between information culture and company performance. Their finding was that a company's information ethos, as they called it, had a direct impact on the effectiveness of a company's information systems. They also found that those information systems had a direct impact on company performance. But more specifically, they found that the CEO was the one person who could bring change in an organisation to foster an information culture. Here are more words of wisdom from other studies. Culture and quality in information services are positively related to performance. Information culture is a strategic goal and should be planned for as much as the transformation of physical resources. Effective information management is how people use information, not machines, and that one's from the Harvard Business Review. The bottom line is that a healthy information culture can lead to corporate success. And during this presentation, I'll show how Atlassian CEOs have managed to pervade an information culture within Atlassian, greatly aided by tools such as Confluence. So let's begin by having a look at the epicenter of Atlassian's information management. It will come as no surprise to you that the bulk of our corporate information is kept on Confluence. It turns out that a wiki is a great way to store information and a great way to make it available to people within an organisation too. So I should start. How many people here are regular Confluence users? Okay. How many people consider themselves expert Confluence users? Okay. And how many people consider themselves early Confluence users and trying to pick up more hints? Okay. So a mix of all things. Hopefully there'll be something in this presentation for all of you. I have memories back from my first job back in 1989 when I was working for a large computer firm, Fujitsu. Back then, information dissemination was by way of large clip-ring binders kept on every manager's shelf. As the junior member of the team, it was my job to update those manuals every month. I'd get instructions from HR with things like, please insert this page after page 45, or please replace page 67 with this page. The sales manual was even more interesting because it had a watermark behind every page of the manager's name, just in case somebody tried to photocopy the price list. Remember photocopiers? So that was the old way of doing things. These days, we have the luxury of using Confluence, which provides a single definitive source of information, together with all historical versions of a page. This is what Atlassian's HR pages look like. And I should actually point out that our HR department is actually called Talent, because we think that all of our staff are rock stars. These pages contain policies, procedures, and links to our payroll system. It's basically an electronic HR manual without the need to distribute physical updates. In general, our Confluence system is open for all staff to edit and update. However, these talent pages are some of the few pages we have with edit restrictions. After all, we don't want staff going in and suddenly declaring 6 months of annual leave each year. But static pages are not very interesting. They're no better than that manual kept on the shelf. You want to know what really makes information interesting? Graffiti. Yes. Graffiti is a person's way of saying something in a forum where expression is not normally permitted. At Atlassian, policy decisions aren't simply handed down like Moses receiving his 10 Commandments. Staff have the ability to comment on any page, including talent policies. Here's an example. This is a page where we had instructions about leave and somebody was asking questions about holidays, and our talent staff go in and answer the questions. Commenting is very much standard practice within Atlassian. Sometimes they're questions. Sometimes they're words of encouragement. We use an internet meme about +1. I did some research for this slide and I found that on Facebook, +1 means I just added someone as a friend. At the Apache Foundation, +1 means I fully support your proposal. On a party invitation, +1 means a guest. You can bring a +1. And on a dating site, +1 is an invitation to be a boyfriend or girlfriend. But here it just means I agree. Oh, and if you've read the news lately, Google is apparently about to release a +1 button to compete with with Facebook's like button. So it's going to be out there. Now, I'm about to show you a page where a staff member announced that they were about to leave the company. They'd been there a while, and people wanted to comment and add their response saying, "Oh, look, terribly sorry you're going, hate to see you go, here's some memories of our time together." And then something interesting happened. Somebody decided to give them a pony, or at least a virtual pony, and others followed suit. So I'll show you this page, and this will give you a feel for how much we comment at Atlassian. Mine was the flaming stallion from World of Warcraft. I'm blogging this. For another example of commenting, here's a page where we're tracking the success of our initial starter license campaign. That's when we were offering 5 user licenses for $5 over the course of 5 days. This page uses Confluence reporting capabilities that I'll discuss later. Staff were watching this page intently over the course of the campaign, but they were also participating in the real-time social experience through the ability to comment. Here's an example. I'll read this in case you can't see it. It's from Jay, our head of sales and marketing. It says, "I pulled up the page and noticed a good friend of mine had bought a license for both Jira and Confluence minutes before. I tweeted him within minutes of his purchase, and he flipped. He sent me an email asking how I could possibly know that fast that he'd purchased. My answer? Confluence, baby. I love Confluence when it's a blank page, but I love it even more when it's stuffed with juicy bits like these." However, not all comments were as positive. Here is a pictorial comment that somebody left when we feared that our support department would be overrun by masses of starter license holders. And there were also words of encouragement and side discussions. However, my favourite one was somebody found a tweet in China. I'll read this for you. We translate it through Google Translation. "This promotion is very good. I frequently use Jira and Confluence, pirated of course. So keep it low key." He tweeted this. "This stimulus package is affordable to me, mainly for personal use, and I will create accounts for 2 buddies, so a 5 user license is enough. The total cost for both Jira and Confluence is $10. This price fits me well. Finally, I made a step towards using properly licensed softwares. After all, these are 2 products I love, therefore they deserve my support." And we thank him for his $10. By the end of the week, this page had over 100 comments of people discussing the campaign. Of course, with so many comments on so many pages, how do staff discover what's going on our system? One way is via our Confluence dashboard. Here's the first page that appears when staff access our corporate Confluence system. It's a great way to see what's happening in the company, and there's plenty of links to other information. It features a fun picture of a recent event which any staff member can update. In fact, it makes a very interesting history of the company to go back and look at those pictures. Then we wanted a way to highlight important information that people should read. Rather than manually compiling a list, we use the content by label macro to show recent pages that have a dashboard tag. That way this list is automatically populated. Then we've got a list of recent kudos, which is our internal staff recognition awards. This list is actually powered by Jira, which we use to track the awards. We've also got a list of most commented blog in the past 3 days. It's sort of a competition within the company to put out a blog post and try and attract the most comments out there. And down the right side is a list of recent activity in the system. However, things scroll by so quickly that this isn't a particularly efficient way to read the news. So we found that the best way to read activity taking place on Confluence is to use the RSS feeds. Just like websites that have RSS feeds to deliver updated information, Confluence can provide an RSS feed of changes to pages, blogs, and comments. I can generate a feed from the inbuilt feed reader. All Atlassian staff are expected to read the RSS feed to keep abreast of company information. Now, this was an easy task back when Atlassian only had 100 staff. But and back then I could read every single blog and every single comment. These days, however, I've got to check the feed every single day and there's still too much information. So I tend to just scan the headlines and look for topics that either interest me or have a lot of comments on them. But why should I bother to read all of these comments and pages? Well, I found that it's a great way for me to keep well informed of what's happening in other parts of the company. You see, my job is involved in running internal IT, not producing the products we make. But I can read blog posts from developers talking about recent features they've put out. I can read blog posts from the marketing people talking about upcoming promotions that will eventually affect me. And I can also read about events happening in other Atlassian offices to help me feel part of the Atlassian family. Another benefit of having news coming out through an RSS feed is that we do not have to have all of these all-hands emails. Let me ask you, where does your company keep its information? If somebody in your company wanted to find out some information from the past, where would they go to get that information? I bet that if you ask this question of most companies out there, they would say that their corporate information is trapped inside each staff member's email inbox. Most companies share information via email. Staff store them in their Microsoft Outlook inboxes, and then they use laboriously slow searches to get that information out again. And if a staff member leaves the company, this information is lost because IT erases their mailbox because it has too many email attachments. Worse yet, if a staff member leaves the company, when a new staff member joins the company, this information is not available because they don't have access to all the emails that were previously sent. So the logical way to do this is to use a shared system where information is kept. Here's something that sort of comes halfway. A recent feature in Confluence is the share button. It sends a link via email. This is a great way to attract people's attention back to a page that they might not otherwise read. And I can also share to a distribution list, so it's a great way to send a message out to the whole company. But rather than the information being in the email, it brings people back into Confluence where they can have a discussion about the information. And if there's a mistake in the page, just fix the page rather than having to send out yet another email. Here's a great upcoming feature in Confluence. Just like Facebook, if somebody mentions you on a page, Confluence can automatically notify you that you've been mentioned and give you a link back to the page. That's how I find out what people are talking about me. So how does Atlassian get staff to participate to such a degree? Well, the secret is that we throw them straight into the proverbial fire by having them blog on their first day of work. They create a Confluence blog post to introduce themselves to the company, and as you would expect, other staff add comments and welcome them to the company. In fact, when I started the company, I wanted to keep my manager informed of what I'd been doing. At the time, I reported to Scott Farquhar, one of the CEOs, and so I sent him an email of what I'd been doing, to which he replied, "Blog it." Now, I didn't think my work was that important that everybody had to know about it, but blogging is not the same as sending an all-hands email. It's just blogging. People can choose to read what they want. So I blogged my update and people got to know about me and about the work that I was doing. This is an example of where Atlassian's founders have influenced Atlassian's corporate information culture. In fact, when we introduced timesheets a bit later, the founders made it very clear they're happy for people to spend time every day reading and writing blogs, and they're even willing to admit that on timesheets. In fact, it's tied to one of the company's core values. Do you know which one? Hit the music, Fred. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Remember what you said and follow your own way. Take a little time to rest and ask yourself, why should I stay? Remember what they did to your untimely. That's right. Open company refers to the default nature of providing information. This applies externally too. All of our pricing is online, our documentation is online, our bug and feature database is online. How many enterprise companies do you know that do that? It also relates to no bullshit. Our pricing, our information is not only open, it's also honest. Now, one downside of having so much information is that sometimes having too much information is worse than having not enough information. It's important to find the balance between producing the information and being able to find the relevant information. So how do we keep all of this information organised? The answer is that we divide our Confluence system into multiple spaces. Spaces like having multiple wikis within one wiki. At the top level is our corporate dashboard that I've already shown you. Next, every department has a space, and large teams can have their own space too. That's where we keep our main corporate information related to that department. Large projects also have their own space to group together information relevant to what they're doing. And finally, but just as importantly, every staff member has their own personal space. This is great because it adds a human side to the system. It also means that staff can create pages that don't necessarily relate to their department or the work that they're doing. They're free to author information and share it with others, even if it's just a programming conundrum or a tidbit of information. For example, I recently blogged internally about a Jira feature that I discovered. You see, I was quite frustrated that whenever I created an issue in Jira, it would send me an email saying, "You just created an issue in Jira." And whenever I added a comment in Jira, it would send me an email saying, "Here's the comment that you just wrote." And each time I would dutifully delete that email while silently cursing such a silly system. But then I did a quick search and I found I could turn off that feature. I hadn't realised it, so I blogged it. What's interesting is that other people appreciated getting this knowledge too, and it actually led to a feature change to make this option more understandable. It was a good example of another of Atlassian's core values. Fred, one more time. Now, our core value is be the change you seek. This shirt is a homage to Confluence, be the edit you seek. I love this core value because it basically says stop complaining and do something about it. As you can imagine with all online discussions, our Confluence system is filled with rants and raves, flame wars and opinions. But if somebody says something should change, then they'll typically get a response from a founder asking them to take ownership and fix it, or be the change you seek. This value actually mirrors beautifully with the idea of a corporate wiki. If you see something wrong, just hit edit and fix it, right? Wrong. What's very interesting is that an unwritten meme seems to pervade Atlassian. It's not documented, it's not taught, it's not obvious. However, it is there. And that seems to be, don't edit other people's pages. Now, that might seem strange to you, given that a wiki is all about being able to edit. Think about all of those stories you hear about Wikipedia of naughty people going off and editing other people's pages. And yet, at Atlassian, it just doesn't seem to happen. So, why is this? I'll tell you. I don't know. However, I do have a theory. I think that it's not polite. It'd be like going into somebody's garden and rearranging their flower bed, or going to somebody's stamp collection and changing all the stamps into coins, or, well, you get the idea. Of course, all changes in Confluence are tracked, and you can easily revert to a previous version, so no information is lost. And yet, these edits just don't seem to happen. The closest thing is somebody going in and fixing a spelling error, but even that doesn't seem to happen much. Sometimes I send a page around, and I invite people to come and edit my pages and add their ideas. Alas, rather than editing it, they much prefer adding comments. I guess it's another way of being polite, as if it's okay to watch, but not to join in. Fred, mandolins again. Information management is not just about storing information, it's also about distributing the information. And the more timely and relevant that information, the better. That's why I love using the watch feature within Confluence. Selecting watch on a page tells you to email me whenever something on the page changes. Let me tell you a few tips about how I use the watch feature. I can watch a space. Now remember, this could be a departmental space, a project space, or even a personal space. So it's a great way for me to know what's going on in my department or on the projects that I'm involved in. With the right permissions, I can manage watches. This lets me see who is watching the page. I can also add additional people and remove them. And also, when I add a comment, I can choose to watch that page for future updates. Just like Facebook, Confluence assumes that I want to be notified about pages when they've been commented or changed. This is useful because people often ask questions on pages that I've created, and I want to know when they've asked that question so that I can reply to them. Now, when we're talking about how we use Confluence, there's one area that deserves special mention, and that's documentation. If you look at all of Atlassian's websites, the most visited website is confluence.atlassian.com. That's where we keep the documentation for all of our products. Not only do we use Confluence for our internal information, we use it to publish information out to the world too. There's numerous benefits to using a wiki for documentation, both internally and externally. If you're interested in using a wiki for documentation, I highly recommend a blog series written by our technical documentation team, which is available at this URL. And I should mention all the URLs you'll see today. I've produced an information list, which there's a link that's already been tweeted out there, and when we put our videos up online, you'll have a link to that too. So you don't have to jot these down. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story relating to documentation. A while ago, we were doing a large recruitment push, and we put a banner at the top of all of our websites saying, "Hey mate, come and join Atlassian." And we got an email from an angry customer because his staff were going to read the documentation pages, and he was accusing us of trying to steal his staff whenever they went there. Sorry, someone here? No? And we had to take down that link, so apologies for that. Now, with all this information on Confluence, how do we keep it organised? Surely we have a team of dedicated wiki gardeners who organise pages, monitor updates, and keep all the information accurate and timely, right? Wrong again. We actually have nobody tending our wiki. Yes, we have sysadmins who keep it running and fix problems, but nobody is responsible for the content of the system. Each team is responsible for managing their own information, and given that every staff member has their own personal space, this duty is widely distributed. So here's my personal tips for keeping your wiki usable. First of all, and this is also on the information sheet that I'm handing out, that is available online. First of all, use good page names. So instead of just calling a page Phase 7, call it Project Camelot Phase 7 Email Preferences Center. This makes it a lot easier to see your results in search listings and make them easier to appear. If you write a page that often repeats, think about putting a date in the title. How many times do you have meeting minutes or status updates? So if it's a repeating topic, put a date in. I like using this format because it sorts very nicely when I get my search results. When you want, if you're having trouble finding a page, add some labels to the page. This counts towards the search results and also lets you use the content by label macro, which is a great way to list pages from other pages. If you want to insert a link to another page, as you saw in the showdown this morning, hit the square bracket and use autocomplete to insert a reference to a page. What I love here is that it shows the recently used pages first, and they're most likely the ones that you want to insert. If a staff member leaves the company, don't delete their pages. Yes, you'll have a lot of information around, but one day that information will be useful and you want to have it available. So don't be like those companies that delete emails when a staff member leaves. Keep the information available on your wiki. Also, help your less technical departments. I found that developers and support people are fantastic at making wiki pages, but HR and finance staff typically need a bit of love and attention to help create those pages. So give those groups a bit more love and attention. And lastly, take a look at plugins.atlassian.com, where we've got some fantastic macros that can enhance your Confluence system, as well as from many of the vendors you've seen here today. But above all, stay aligned to the concept of making your information open and accessible. As the study showed, this can help lead to improved corporate performance. Okay, enough about Confluence. Let's now take a look at the other systems we use to manage our information at Atlassian. There are stories about the early days of Atlassian where they couldn't find a good bug tracker, so they wrote Jira. They couldn't find a good corporate wiki, so they wrote Confluence. These days, however, we're quite open to using third-party systems to track information rather than having to write everything ourselves. I'll now give you an overview of some of these systems. Some of them are quite complex, like financial systems, and some of them are ingeniously simple. Nothing could be simpler or more useful than instant messaging. We use IM extensively for real-time communication. Every single employee has an IM client open at all times, and we use it to send out announcements, such as systems going down or parties starting in the basement. IM also replaces all hands emails. Tell me, have you ever come back from leave only to find 20 headlights left on in the car park type emails in your box? Yeah, well, that doesn't happen with IM. Of course, there's a special etiquette that surrounds IM. Do you remember that Seinfeld episode where George turned to his girlfriend and said, "I love you," and she didn't respond? Well, the same thing happens with IM. Do you say, "Are you there?" Or "Do you have a moment?" Or do you just send your question out there and hope for a response? Needless to say, we had a discussion online about exactly this topic, and we had 24 comments of how to do that. Want another simple system? Take a look at our paste bin. This is an open source utility that gives a convenient place to copy and paste snippets of information. I can quickly paste in a bit of information and then send the URL to somebody else. It's great for situations where I have too much information for an IM message and not enough to really warrant a full email message. There's a public pastebin service available at pastebin.com, or you can easily download an open source version. Here's another fun example. This is our staff contact list. Well, not quite our staff contact list. I couldn't show you the real thing due to privacy. However, it looks a lot like this. It's colourful, interactive, and very useful. It lets me search by name, location, or department. It uses an open source technology originally developed by M.E.A.T, and you just feed a list of your staff data, and up it appears, and you can easily search for people. You can visit this website and download a copy. I highly recommend it if you don't have a good repository of staff information. On the topic of staff, do you have trouble managing all of your staff information? Back when we had 100 people, it was okay, but now we've got over 300 staff. Our talent people have trouble tracking information about all our staff. Who's their manager? What department are they in? Which office are they in? So we started using a web-based system called Bamboo HR. Now, it has nothing to do with our Bamboo system, just a coincidence. But it's a very good product, and they're very open to incorporating our needs into their system. So if you're looking for a system that can handle your staff information, doesn't do payroll, but does general HR things, I highly recommend that solution. Another side of HR is performance management. If you've been reading our blog lately, you might have seen that Atlassian has done away with performance ratings and replaced it with a series of regular coaching reviews. To assist this process, we started using a system called Small Improvements, which takes an agile, friendly approach to performance management. It was written by an ex-Atlassian who was in charge of Confluence development. Therefore, it integrates with both Confluence and Crowd. And he heard I was giving this talk today, and he sent me a very special offer. For the next 36 hours, he's making 25 user licenses available to anyone who attended the summit. So highly recommend you check out this solution if you hate your current performance management system. Who does know? Turning to larger systems, some time ago we moved our email and calendaring from Zimbra to Google Apps, and this has been a great change because people just love using the Gmail products, and it synchronises to every device known to mankind. Talking of calendars, here's another fun example of information management at Atlassian. Oh, wrong type of meat. Outside of each of our meeting rooms in Sydney, there's an iPad stuck to the wall. It displays information about the meeting currently taking place and how long the room will be occupied. If I want a meeting room, I can touch the screen to discover other rooms that are available and book them instantly. The iPad is the perfect medium for this type of thing. It's small, has a touch interface, and talks via Wi-Fi to the internet. The app is actually just JavaScript running in the standard Safari browser, making API calls back to Google Calendar. It was built by a couple of Atlassian developers using our famous 20% time. And it's another example of the neat technology that we get to use at Atlassian. And people keep wondering why we buy so many iPads. If you send an email to our customer service team, we process it using HelpSpot, a great help desk system from a company in New York State. We searched high and low for a good web-based email response management system that didn't require Microsoft technology. And we were very pleased to find this one. The company is very Atlassian-like. They have their pricing online, you can download the product, you can get support while you're evaluating it. So I highly recommend their product as well. Of course, if you use us for support, feature requests and bug tracking, we use our own product Jira for a lot of that. And our support site has many homegrown modifications and new capabilities to fit our business model. And some of these will be spoken about at other summit talks here. I highly recommend the dashboard topic, where you'll get to see how we monitor real-time the information within our Jira system. For finance, we use NetSuite, which is a cloud-based accounting system. We looked at replacing it a while back, but we couldn't find any other decent web-based multi-company, multi-currency system. We did look at the Microsoft Dynamics solutions, but they're awful. Have you looked at them? They have this fat client that talks directly to the database. It's a two-tier technology. So if you want to use it globally, you have to keep them together. So you put in a data center and access everything with Microsoft Terminal Services. It's like, I feel dirty just thinking about it. For reporting, we have traditionally used Confluence, which has great abilities to display information from databases. Put in an SQL macro and information appears from your database. Wrap it in a chart macro and you've got some visuals. Throw in a run macro and you can have options for your queries. Put in some deck and card macros and it can look quite attractive. There was a presentation on this topic at last year's summit. The videos are still online, or you can visit this URL for details on how to do that. And it's amazing what you can do in a wiki for reporting. These days, however, we've moved to a new product from Germany called InstantOLAP that does more sophisticated reporting. It runs on any Java-based platform. Highly recommend it, and I'm happy to discuss anything to do with reporting after this presentation. It's my favourite hammer. It's also worth mentioning that our standard database is PostgreSQL. It's open source, cross-platform, and extremely fast. I highly recommend that as well. As you may have heard, Atlassian doesn't have a sales team. We do, however, have a renewals team who contacts you if you don't renew your software maintenance. For that, we use salesforce.com to track the renewal opportunities. And I must admit, I'm a bit of a Salesforce fanboy. You'll find my personal Salesforce blog at theenforcer.net, where I talk about the technical side of Salesforce implementations. All these systems I've mentioned do not require you to use any Microsoft technology. Sometimes when I say this to people, they assume I'm looking for open source or free software, but most of the systems I've shown you today are fully commercial supported systems. You really can run a business without giving money to Microsoft. So in conclusion, I hope you've gained some insight today about how Atlassian's founders have encouraged a unique information culture within the company. This culture has a continuing influence on our choice of information systems. We consider these systems to have a direct impact on our company performance. I'll finish with a quote from another academic study on this topic. Organisations first recognise the need to adopt an information culture, then demonstrate commitment by restructuring to reflect that culture. The process continues until the philosophy and practice of an information culture become the norm. At this stage, the information culture is no longer distinguishable from the organisational culture, and the organisation has evolved into one in which the availability and use of information are inherent in everyday activities. So, as we conclude this session, I'll leave you with just one question. What's your information culture? Thank you.